So now it's time to edit a story and add insights in Salesforce Einstein Discovery. And so to get to the existing stories that you have, just click on the Stories tab. That pulls up any existing stories. We've got the AP distribution story that we created previously. And I can click the down arrow here to view the story or view the setup of the story, share and export, delete, and then just view the about as well. Let's view the story setup to remind us of what we did for the setup. And here's how you get to this particular screen. And this story, the goal of it, or the question we're trying to answer, is how can we maximize margin in this data set? And these are the different variables of the setup. Just wanted to remind you of that. And then if we go back to our story, you can just click on it to go inside of it and see some of the insights that are provided. Now these are automatically provided insights that Salesforce Einstein Discovery comes up with, and it highlights some of the most glaringly obvious things. Now, it'll take you a little while to get used to the layout of this particular screen and what these different things mean and what they do, and that's what this particular lecture is about. Now, I'm not going to go in depth on this particular story because this is the story that Salesforce has served up on a platter for the Trailhead Trail. And if you complete that trail, it'll take you through all the steps and processes of understanding and seeing a couple of things. But I just want to highlight real quickly, so you have a little preview of this if you haven't done this trail yet, is that alternators have a worse than average margin. And so you've got alternators down here that are not doing well. And so the Trailhead Trail will take you through clicking on some of these recommended insights and some of the results. And if I scroll down, there's actually 16 different insights here. And so another one here is margin by product when distributor is Nisizu. And it says that when the distributor is Nisizu, the product hybrid motors and lift supports do better. So if you notice, lift supports and hybrid motors and also belt drives do well comparatively, whereas alternators are still not doing well, for example. And then we get into margin by product when distributor is Nokima, et cetera, et cetera. And so this scrolls down for 16 different results. And then as you scroll down, you notice these things updating. And here we've got what happened relating to region. If I scroll down some more, you'll see this refresh and update where it's relating to region and distributor. And here's some different results that you can click through. I'll show you what happens with those. So Germany has a better than average margin, and you'll get a glimpse of that as well in that particular story in the Trailhead Trail. And then you can remove some of these automatically and everything refreshes. And you can also add insights by clicking Add Insight. We're not going to do that quite yet, but I want to move on to other stories and create other stories that we can play with that go beyond the Trailhead Trail. So if I go back to my data sets, and this will be a little bit of a reminder of how to create a story, I want to create a couple of stories. One is that you won't necessarily have access to is the reviews data set. But I want to create a story from that data set, and I want to maximize the rating of my courses. I want to improve the ratings of my courses. I don't want to minimize the rating, but I want to improve the ratings that people leave for my courses. So I'm going to see if Einstein Discovery can show me patterns of ways that I can actually take action and improve the overall ratings of my courses. So I'm going to let that story be created and let Einstein work on that. And you begin to see that you can figure out ways to relate this to your own situation. I see instances where you could actually input data related to your spending from, exporting from your bank account, for example, and it could reveal to you that you're eating out too much and you need to, eat more peanut butter and jelly or sandwiches for lunch or something like that. But anyways, for this particular story that I've just created related to my courses, one of the insights that it's provided is whenever comments are blank, my average rating is lower than whenever there's comments. So anytime anyone enters a comment along with giving a rating, it averages a 4.601. You notice the numbers down here. When it's null, it's 4.466. And when it's other, meaning that something other than null, it's 4.601. And so I think that, one of the things we can see here, I guess as a human, I'm taking away from this that if I can encourage people to actually provide feedback, or if I had control over, some of the platforms that I'm on, I don't have control over making comments required. But like on my own platform, if I had instituted a rating system there, I could make comments required, and then that might have a result on raising my overall ratings, because when people actually take the time to think about what they want to say, they might really think about the rating a little more. Whereas, the vast majority of ratings, people just pick a number of stars and they don't leave any sort of commentary. But what Einstein Discovery is saying that other has better than average ratings, so that means other than null. Comments explains 0.7% of the variation in rating. And here are some cases where rating was better than average. And then you can see as well rating by created date. And so some of these I can see over time that my ratings did really well in the month of May, whereas back in August of 2016 was kind of my worst month. So you can see some historical data and start to see some patterns. Now, one thing is that I released a course in April, and it was my administrator practice test course, and it did very well and is still rating very well. So that's causing my overall ratings to go up higher, and that's probably why there's like a record month here in May. And so a case of rating being better than average is in May of 2017, it's 0.135 above average. That's a big jump when you're on a 1 to 5 point scale. And then as well, we can see our ratings by course name. This is actually some pretty cool data that I'm seeing here. And so this is, and as I mentioned, the Salesforce Administrator Certification Practice Test course average is 4.65. You can see the difference from overall. Platform App Builders rating well. My lowest rated course is my Introduction to Salesforce Certification and Career Planning. It's right at a 4.4, 4.39. I tend to round up whenever it's lower to try and help bump it up. But seriously, this course is one that I've flipped to free, and it's introductory information. And because it's a free course, people tend to rate free courses or things that they don't pay money for lower than things that they actually invest money in. And it is a short course, and some people already know a lot of the information in there. But you see here, complete Salesforce admin course 4.508. Platform App Builder 4.59, new user 4.566, and then other, I'm not sure what that would be. Oh, that would be my Lightning Experience course, because at the time of this, these are just all the courses that I have. You can see ratings by hour of day. That doesn't tell me a whole lot because it's not breaking out by every hour of the day. And actually, I have scheduled imports of the ratings. And so this one is one that is kind of skewed because most of these are created like in the middle of the night when I have an Apex job that imports these. So I'm just going to get rid of this one. And that shows you how to delete an insight basically. Let's go back to the Stories tab now, and I'll show you that now we've got two stories. We've got the AP distribution, then the reviews, and then let's go back to data sets and let's pull in Netflix. This is one that you have access to, and I'm going to create a story from this data set. And so that brings me to the story setup, and I want to either minimize or maximize something. And so let's try and maximize the user rating score. We're going to try and find data and patterns in this data set that will reveal to us, what overall tends to get a higher score, basically. There's nothing that we can do actionable-wise because we're not Netflix, but this is the sort of data that they could look at and see, what sort of programming tends to get a higher rating than others. And that might help them to determine their own original programming decisions that they're making and things like that. So that's how you could apply this sort of data set in creating this story. And then we're going to add some insights and make some changes. And so for this data set, we see that the highest rated scores are TV14 and TVMA. And then the things that score low is TVY and G rated, and then whatever other is. And so you can see user rating score by rating level. And so you see parental guidance suggested may not be suitable for all children. The average is 88.47. For mature audiences is 88.23. And then the average score for suitable for all ages is 75.06. And parents strongly cautioned, this would be, I guess, the TV14 generally. That's average of 86.25. And so you can begin to see some data emerging here, user rating score by rating description, and then user rating score by release year. Here you can see that the newer fares better on Netflix. The newer it is, and the more current it is, it rates higher than the older stuff. So anything from 1940 to 1997 averages a rating of 76.28, whereas things released in 2017 average a rating of 90.43. So you can see For instance, if I'm on this particular insight for user rating score by release year, we could, instead of saying what happened, we could select why it happened and see what other results we get here. And so Einstein works and we see these different results. So, and this really drills down sometimes to emerge some patterns. For example, I'm going to click on rating level as parental guidance suggested and may not be suitable for all children, may be affecting user rating score when release year is 2014 to 2015. Now, here's some waterfall charts, and these are kind of strange to look at if you're not familiar with them. And so you've got your different axes here, and you've got a contribution to outcome, and then you've got on this other axis, the global outcome, release years 2014 to 15, unrelated, and then observed outcome. And somehow, I don't know how Einstein Discovery does this, but it gives a lot of information in a text-based format that is very helpful in understanding what this data is telling you. So one, I guess, weird variation or thing that is being discovered here is that the rating level as parental guidance suggested may not be suitable for all children occurs 6.3% of the time globally, but it changes to 21.5% when it's known that the release year is 2014 to 2015. Because of these cases, user rating score increases by 2.905 per transaction. Now, these aren't necessarily transactions. These are just, user ratings. But for whatever reason, I don't know why that would be, but between the years of 2014 and 2015, if it's this particular rating level, then the rating score increases by 2 to 3 points. And so you might want to add an insight on that. So click Add Insight, and it adds that insight to the story. And so now it brings us back to that particular insight, and we can then drill down further. This is why it happened, and you could click on some of these other recommended insights to see more details. You could click on how can I improve it, and it takes a little while and it's not showing anything here, but there should be some results that pop up eventually on what actionable things you could do to improve things or get it to head in the right direction that you're wanting to. So let me scroll down a little bit to see if I can get this to pop up. So actually it's not coming up with anything of how you can improve for that drilled down of an insight, but if I scroll up to this one here, it automatically updates to show for how can I improve it for user rating score by release year. You could maximize user rating score by changing the release year. And so basically Einstein is discovering or telling you that the way that you can help overall ratings across Netflix as a platform is they need to release more current releases and newer things and not invest heavily in the older stuff. And that's probably why you're seeing a move towards that more by Netflix. They already know this sort of data and have seen this. But this at least gives you an idea of how you can get actionable insight with your own data sets. So the main things here is that you've got your selections for recommended insights. How can I improve it? What could happen? Why it happened? And what happened? So for example, if we say what could happen, and you can relate this to different things, you could relate it to release year as it is now, or you can select multiples. You can say release year and rating level, for example. So you're beginning to get an idea of the functionality and how you can slice and dice your data and combine things and group things. So you could do even predicted things. So the what could happen sort of insights have to do with things and predicting what might happen. So the predicted user rating score when rating level is parents strongly cautioned may be unsuitable for children ages 14 and under. That gives you an insight of predicted user rating score. I'm going to add that insight as well. And so you see now that these stories can be very powerful things in Salesforce Einstein. So if I go back to my stories, I have my 3 stories and I've got my Netflix story with now 6 insights. Now, other things that you can do, we've already looked at adding a story and adding insights, is that you can also play executive summaries. And so in the next section, let me go back to viewing this particular story. So what we're going to do in the next section is we're going to learn about creating and playing and exporting executive summaries, a very powerful functionality of Einstein Discovery. And so what I encourage you to do before you move on to the next section is to work through the trailhead trail related to the AP distribution data set and work through and finish that trail. And then I'll take you through a lot of the steps of getting inside and editing these stories. And then as well, it'll introduce you to the executive summary function, and then we'll explore it further on the other side in the next section.